Hey, how you doing out there? This is Ram Vasia with another video. Today we're going to discuss some of the things that I've learned over my career and the things that I really wish somebody had told me before I got started. But before we do, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell to make sure that you get notified whenever I upload a new video. All right, let's get to it. Number one, small town. The music industry is really like a small town, right? There's tons of genres. There's tons of different things going on. There's different styles of music. There's different scenes, whatever, right? But each one is like a small town. It's a little circle with its own hierarchy and its own groups of people, and everybody knows everybody. The bigger you are, the higher you go, the smaller the circles get, right? And some people are there, they're respected because they were there since the beginning of the scene, and some people are there, they've been to every show. They're those diehard fans that everybody knows, right? And then there's those musicians who are the cornerstone musicians of the scene. And then there's you, this creep that just shows up out of nowhere. Nobody knows you. You're trying to stand out, right? You're not wanting to fit in because you want everybody to notice you, and then you're asking for a loan. Well, it's a little bit strange, right? And of course, the loan here is a loan of their attention. Well, it doesn't look great. Nobody really wants to give you that. But when you do finally get an opportunity, it is very, very important that you do everything in your power to perform better than they could have ever expected, to be polite, to be kind, to be everything that you would want out of another musician or another artist. Because if you don't, just like any other small town, they're going to talk. Everybody in the scene is going to know, and chances are you're not going to get any more work. At least not for a really long time, and you're going to have to work extremely hard to get any more opportunities. All right, number two, don't burn bridges. Going back to this being a small town, everybody knows everybody. So if you burn a bridge with one person, chances are you're going to burn a bridge with a lot of people. And the interesting thing about this industry is that you never know who you're talking to. It may seem like somebody who is not that important, somebody who really is not a big part of this industry, but they could actually be the linchpin that allows you to get in to the rest of the industry and uh, really boost your career. So it's really, really important that you treat everybody with respect and that you're kind and that you do your best uh, no matter what and who you're talking to. Number three, you are not as good as you think you are. For me, music has always been a huge part of my life. Ever since I was a kid, music was super important. And because of that, I spent a lot of time learning music and understanding it, studying it in college, and honing my skills, right? Working with a lot of different people and doing whatever I could to become as good as I possibly could. But it never ceases to amaze me how many times I go to a show or I perform and see somebody who just completely blows my mind. See somebody who seems so effortless and they are still so much better than I am. And it doesn't matter for those people, there's still somebody who's better. There's always going to be somebody better. So don't let your pride get in the way. Don't let yourself think that you're so good that you can just push people around because that is never the case. All right, number four. When you think you're working too hard, you need to work harder. This industry is so, so difficult. There are so many people trying to stand out that it is incredibly difficult to get anywhere. Now, social media and the technology have really given us a boost, but it's really a two-edged sword. You can get all your music out there, but there's so many people doing the same thing that you can get lost. And in fact, you will get lost no matter who you are. Even really big names get lost in the big mess of everybody trying to post their music and trying to get everybody's attention. So the only way around that is to work really hard. I remember when I started, I worked extremely hard. I put in all the effort that I possibly could. I spent hours and hours talking to people, playing music, getting to know people at clubs, at venues. I was at venues, 4 or 5 nights a week, getting to know bands, getting to know people in the scenes that I was working in, getting to know the bookers at the clubs, and I was always amazed because I'd meet people who were working so much harder than I was. And no matter how hard I worked, there was always somebody who was putting in just a little bit more and getting just a little bit more out of it. When it comes down to it, if you are not getting the results that you are looking for, more than likely it's because you are not putting in the amount of work that is required to get those kinds of results. Number 5. This one's going to be controversial. Inspiration is BS. As musicians, as artists, we like to use the crutch of inspiration. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. All of us who are in this industry do it. But the fact is that's just an excuse. If we all sat around waiting for inspiration, nothing would ever get done. How is a record label going to bank on inspiration? How is a distro that is expecting a release date going to be okay with you just submitting it whenever you want because you didn't have the inspiration? That's just not the way it works, right? You need to be able to push through it. You need to be able to give yourself the inspiration no matter what, regardless of your mood, regardless of anything, regardless of what's going on in your life. You need to be able to deliver, because that's what you're doing. That's your job. That's what you've chosen to do with your life. And in order to continue to do it, you need to be able to deliver. If you get signed, you need to be able to deliver on time. If you are an independent and you're working with a distro, you're going to need to be able to give them the single or the album when you say you were going to. If you promise your fans something, you have to be able to deliver, regardless of your inspiration. So you'll need to figure something out. For me, I rely on a schedule. And that schedule allows me to push past any blocks, to push past those times where I just am not feeling it. Because I know that I only have X amount of time. All right. Number 6, take responsibility. We push so hard as musicians and as artists, and we build these personas that oftentimes are way cooler than we are in person. And it's super easy to start buying into that. But in the end, regardless of how big we are or how big we believe we are, we still have to take responsibility. President Truman had a sign on his desk that read, "The buck stops here." And that's so true for our industry. There's nobody to blame but you. One of my previous projects was a band that was kind of a mixture between Cinderella and Guns N' Roses, and within the first year we got tons of traction. We were opening for every big name, we were getting all sorts of shows, we were being asked to play everywhere. And of course, as the front man, I was like, yeah, I'm awesome, this is great, I started this band and we're doing amazing, right? And I started buying into my own hype. As things fell apart at the signing table, I blamed everybody else. The guitarist leaving, I blamed circumstances, I blamed the crew wasn't doing what they were supposed to be, it was our booking agent, whatever the case might have been. I blamed everybody but myself. Looking back now with a little bit more experience and a little bit more knowledge, I realized that all of those things happened because of me, because of my ego, because of my inability to compromise. The guitarist left not because he was a jerk, but because I was a jerk. The crew wasn't working at the level that I wanted them to, not because they didn't want to work hard, but because I wasn't giving them the directives that they needed in order to get there. As I looked through all of it, I realized that every one of those actions, or lack of actions, were the cause of things falling apart. And it all fell on me. And the same thing goes for your career. There's nobody to blame but you for the things that do or do not happen. Because in the end, nobody is going to make your career for you. You have to do it. Number 7, be tough as nails. No is the most popular word in this industry. You're going to hear it again and again and again and again. It doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how big you are, there's always going to be somebody who is not interested in what you're doing, doesn't believe in you, thinks you're a has-been, thinks that you are never worth, thinks that you don't have enough draw, whatever the case might be. There's always going to be no's. In fact, the majority of the answers that you're going to get is a no, and that's if you even get an answer at all. Because a lot of times you're not even going to get an answer. They're not going to deem you worthy of even responding to you. If you are sensitive, if you are somebody who gets easily offended by these things, or gets angry about these things, or lets your pride get hurt by these things, you need to either figure out a way to get over it, or you need to get out of this industry, because that's the majority of what we're going to get. And that's the majority of what you get, regardless of how long you've been in it. Number 8. A music career is 10% music and 90% everything else. As much as I would love to say that I spend the majority of my time writing music, and that other musicians spend the majority of their time writing music, the fact is that we spend very little of the time, about maybe 10% of my time, and other artists' time is spent actually in the studio writing music. The rest of the time is spent marketing, business meetings, phone calls, responding to emails, social media, interviews if you're at that point, whatever the case might be. There's so many other things, all those things that are required in order to make your career. All of those things are going to take up way more time than the time that you actually get to do music. Now, if you're a professional musician who's been touring a lot, that time may be a little bit different. But that still means that you're going to be performing a lot of these songs that you've already performed again and again and again. You're not going to have the time to create new stuff unless you set time aside while you're on the plane or on the bus or in a van. So you're still going to be doing everything else, all these other things that you need to do just to keep your career going. And very little of your time is going to be spent writing music. So at the beginning of your career, most of us, I believe pretty much all of us, got into it because we loved it, right? We were passionate. We just wanted to get out there and play. We just wanted to write a piece of music that people were going to hear. And that's great at the beginning. But as you move into your career, if you want to be successful, you need to move on from that. And you need to realize that everything has to be done in the right order and in the right place in order to be able to be successful. And that leads me to the next point, number 9. It's a business. Act like it. All those other things that we're doing to keep the career going or to even build a career, those are all part of a business. Like any business, you need to understand the ins and outs. You need to understand the legalities of your business. You need to understand how you're making money, how the money is being spent. You need to understand the management of the business. You need to understand how things are run, how you get on a tour, how you get a distro, how you deal with a record label, how you market yourself. If you have people who can do it for you, you need to learn how to manage people. You need to learn how to manage finances, how your taxes handled, all those different things. If you don't have a basic understanding of at least the basics of the financial side of the music industry, the copyrights, law, you're really going to struggle. In fact, you may not make it at all, or you're going to end up being one of those musicians who gets somewhere and then gets screwed when they get everything stolen from them or taken away from them because they didn't pay their taxes, or because they didn't understand how to deal with a management company, or they didn't understand how to vet a manager beforehand or an employee beforehand, and now all your money's gone. There's tons of horror stories out there. You just look it up there, you can find tons of them out there. And if you don't treat it like a business, and you don't treat it the same way that you would a brick and mortar office or any other business, you're going to be in trouble. Not only do you need to treat it in a business in that sense, but you also need to treat it in a business in the sense of hours. For me, I have a very set schedule. I get up at 4 a.m. and I go through a morning routine. I'm in the studio working on music by 9 o'clock. If my kids have to go to school, obviously that changes a little bit. But I know that I have exactly a certain amount of time, depending on the day, that I'm going to be working on music. And the rest of the time, I know that I have all these different things that I have to get done, that I do not have a choice. I do not ever push things to the next day unless I do not have a choice. And that's incredibly important. You need to treat it that way in order to move forward. All right, last one, number 10. Never be satisfied. Yes, everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to feel like they're accomplished, like they've gotten there. But the fact is that no matter how big you are, the second that you think you've made it, the second that you're satisfied with your progress, you are falling backwards. Because when it comes down to it, if you are not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So you have to keep pushing. You have to be hungry. You have to keep doing more. You always have to think ahead. You have to think, okay, what's coming up? Where do I want to be? What is my goal as a musician, as an artist? Where's my next income going to come? How am I going to make the next tour better than the last one? How am I going to make the next song better than the last one? You always need to be pushing harder than you did before. And regardless of how big you are, you need to work harder than you ever did before if you want to continue to make it. If your goal is just to have a one hit wonder and then move along and you get to that point, well, then bravo for you. I'm glad you reached your goals. But for those of you that want to have a long lasting career and really want to build it over time and be successful over time, you need to always be hungry. All right, I hope you've enjoyed these lessons that I've learned over my career. Um, if you have any questions, of course, please feel free to ask in the comments. Again, I'm Ram Vasio. Please make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell.